All righty. Thank you, Pam. Welcome everybody. Like Pam said, we're just gonna kind of go through the couple things that we were missing last time. I'm gonna go through the live part, and then hopefully we'll have about maybe 15-20 minutes at the end for anybody that can answer their questions, and I can go through exactly what you need. I do want to start off with the QuickBooks time that I discussed last time when we were talking about employees. Those timesheets are actually only available now in QuickBooks Online. There is not an app for them. They used to be in QuickBooks Time, which is now a charged app. If you're dealing with payroll in Premier and Elite, I believe, there comes for free. But if you don't have QuickBooks Payroll, unfortunately, QuickBooks Time app is not going to work anymore. And so therefore it made me look at what the QuickBooks Online app allows you to do, because you used to be able to do it in there and you can't do it there either. So that's very unfortunate that Intuit changed their, plans of what they were doing, but it does kind of make sense of making it a payroll thing. But you can still do it through QuickBooks Online. Unfortunately, you're just not going to be able to do it through an app. So with that, I will share my screen. Oh, can everybody, Pam, you can see, everybody can see?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're just gonna continue on. We didn't do others last week. We missed kind of this miscellaneous category. So we'll just continue on. So we're gonna do your bank deposit, your transfer, any kind of journal entries and what they do, and how to do statements for multiple people all at once. So when I was talking about in the first and probably the second class, when I talked about undeposited funds and said you're going to put them all together, that you're going to have those 5, I think I used $100 transactions. If you get them from your customers, you put them all in, you're going to have undeposited funds. This is where you're going to make it that one $500 bank deposit. So you're going to go into that other, it says bank deposit. You're going to see this screen. It's going to have which checking account or savings account or whatever, money markets, all of that stuff that you have, where you're going to deposit it is going to be here. The date you want to change. These are what is going to show up of what is a non-deposited funds, and you're going to pick and choose which ones you want. So if you put in an amount that it's going to be for everything, then QuickBooks will think that you're doing everything, but then you can pick and choose, unclick this if you have to, click this one again. And then down here, if you had something else that you were going to add to it. So say you had another, $300 deposit check or a check from yourself that you were going to put in. You can put it in down here into that same bank deposit. So that way it does match your bank account. So you would put owner's draw, insurance payment, whatever it happened to have been down here. What it is, a reference number is usually helpful for you to go back. The amount is very very important. And then you're going to hit save and new. Creating a transfer is the next thing. This is usually between the bank accounts that are within the same bank. QuickBooks allows you to do transfers to credit cards, but most people aren't going to use them. You're going to use the pay down credit card feature. You're going to use an expense to put that towards your credit card. So if these were mainly for moving accounts from a payroll checking account to a regular checking account to money market, checking account to savings, all of that type of thing, or putting money back in, you can do a transfer. So the transfer comes where it's coming from, where it's going to, the amount. If you want an internal note, you would put it here. The same thing with the attachments, if for like everything else, if there was something in particular you had to go through, you drag and drop it here. If this was something that, we'll talk about this a little bit with the recurring transactions, but if this was something that happened on, say, every other Friday or the first of every month all the time, you can make it reoccurring down here. So therefore you do not have to go in and manually do it on the first or whatever dates you choose. Creating a journal entry. So journal entries are just a simple way to behind the scenes fix some transactions that you may or may not have entered incorrectly. Or if you have an accountant or your CPA or your bookkeeper is going to come in and they may not do a year's worth of transactions altogether. They might just come in and just do, okay, so much spent in insurance, so much spent in commissions, bank charges, etc. So you guys as small business owners are not going to use journal entries very often. You may have your POS system import things into journal entries, but that's kind of phasing out as well. They're going to go into sales receipts. But again, those, you're not going to really deal with it. But if you had to, in this case, if we made a mistake and you put in $100 in commissions and it should have been $50, we're going to go in, we're going to make a journal entry. We're going to have the right date. You're going to increase and decrease whichever account you need to do. So in this case, we're going to decrease commissions and fees by putting in a credit for $50. It's always helpful to put the description in there for at least the first line. So therefore it's a little note to yourself of what you did, or somebody like myself that comes in and says, hey, what's going on? Oh, okay, that's what they did. That makes sense. We're good to go and move on. We don't have to go research it. So notes for yourself, just kind of make it quick, make it easily understandable. The bank charges is what's going to offset that, because you want to increase bank charges and lower your commissions. So you've got them both here. $50, $50. These are always going to have to match, or QuickBooks going to give you a little pop-up saying there's a problem. And then you can hit save and close or save and new. This next page is going to show you both sides of what I just talked about. So you're going to see on the transaction report, you were originally in here for $100. You decreased it by $50. So now for your commissions and fees are $50. And then on the other side, you had nothing, you just happen to have nothing for your bank charges. You've now added that $50 you took out here and put it into bank charges.
Hey, Crystal, I have a question from somebody on transfers. It says, why do external transfers come through on the bank feeds?
I hate it. I have no idea, but I hate it. Unfortunately, like, it's a intuitive decision on why they did it. I don't know why. And unfortunately, there's not even a way to change it. So again, I obviously let my feelings be told on that. There's nothing we can do besides manually going in and just changing it to the right expense or whatever you need it to be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So customer statements. If you are somebody that uses invoices all the time, you've got 50 invoices that go out every month, or hundreds of invoices that go every month, and you want to keep track of this and use statements for your clients, and so they know which ones are past due, what's not, all of that stuff. You can do that by a grouping here. You do not have to go into each individual client or customer and just send the statement. You can, if for certain instances where it's just one-offs or one or two you got to deal with. But if you're going to deal with a whole bunch of them, you're going to go into that new statement and you'll get this screen that allows you to email them all off at once. The client will only get what they're seeing. So Jeff is only going to get Jeff's. It's not like any of these are going to mix up. They're only going to go to whichever email address you have on that line. You can change this up here of if you want to include any of their unpaid balances before, if you want it to only be what's open, if you want to show all of them, you're going to show it between here and then this customer balance status. So you can just play around with it as well. You can also change your statement date and what you want them to see. So if you wanted this to be November 19th for whatever reason, but you only wanted to show the 19th to the 19th, you could do that here. You could do the January 1st through November 19th, whichever ones you kind of want to do from your side. And then you, again, just like everything else down here, you're just going to pick and choose who you want to send it to. You can just save and send it, and it will automatically send all 17 of these off. Thought there was a question. Sorry.
Well, I do have one that's sort of about that.
Okay.
So I had a client that's been having trouble with their invoices being sent through QuickBooks. Is there a solution or a place they can get help on that? Because she's tried to call, and every time she tries to call, she can't get through to anybody because it's like after hours.
So what does it mean? It's just not going through at all?
Right.
Like her email, like what's the pop-up she's getting?
She's not getting a pop-up. She thinks the emails are being sent, but the clients aren't getting them. And it's a lot of clients.
So it's not like it's a new, because I have noticed that sometimes that QuickBooks must have done an update relative, they do them all the time, but one of their more recent updates have been that some of these invoices are going into a spam folder for people. But it sounds like you're talking a huge group of people that are not getting them, and that's kind of odd that they would all go to spam.
Okay,
Has she tested it from her email to like another email? Like if she
I
did
am
a
not
business
sure.
email to a personal email to see if she's gotten them, or maybe even to you. To see, because sometimes it can be that it's like a very broad question, because it can
Okay,
be your email provider that's having a problem. It could be a spelling error, but it's a real email address in QuickBooks. It could be all the way to the spam folder. So it would kind of have to be a little dug into a little bit more to test out where the problem is.
okay. I'll have her test it and see if we can figure it out. Thank you.
Just to add that it is in the, someone added in our comments that, a lot of their members report the invoices end up in their spam folders, so.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot more lately than say last year. So it has to do, there is something going on in the tech side of it that is way over my head. But between all these security updates and, probably all these data breaches, they're trying to kind of clease it out, and therefore a lot of things are going in a junk folder, spam folder. So, all right. So moving on, so we're gonna just making a credit card payment. If you do not want to do it from the bank register itself or from the credit card register, you can do that from here. So in that new thing, they've actually added it to bring it to this screen for you, that you can pay down the credit card, and it's basically question and answers. So which one do you want to pay it down? Is it your MasterCard? Is it your Visa? Etc. Do you want it to have a name? I suggest you do, even if it is just MasterCard, but still, you don't have to, but it's easier to do your reporting and to kind of follow through where your payments are from that end. How much did you want to pay? The date, where are you making the payment from? And then if you did this for, you actually did an actual check, most people are not using this right now because it's a lot of it is just automated and you can do it from the bank register, but it does give you the option to, if you did make payment with a check, you can say, I paid it with a check, it was check number, whatnot. So when you are in the banking dashboard, it will record this and it will match it versus creating an extra expense.
One more note on that previous conversation. There was a reminder from somebody saying that people should ask their members or clients to whitelist the QBO email, and hopefully that will eliminate the problem of them going into spam.
Yes, good point. Very good point. Yes, you can absolutely do that, because that way it will just eliminate it. Sometimes it's easy as just an email blast throwing it out there to everybody.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so we are gonna go into the live session. I'm gonna go through the gear icon pretty much step by step, but I'm just gonna show you guys live because it just seems to be easier. This is the time where you can kind of pop in and do some questions, but these are the things we'd like to get through. So depending on our timing, within the next half an hour, 40 minutes, however long it takes us to get through this, we can save your questions with those parking lot. And I did see Pam's parking lot. I think some of those questions are going to be answered here.
Yep. And there's some other questions that have been coming in on the chat that I'm holding until we get to some of those places or towards the end.
So so this is the live sample, this is just QuickBooks sample company that we're going to use. Most of you, again, will see this screen. You might see some other changes because they're doing all that modern look upgrades, but it's all the same stuff that we've been talking about. You're going to go, actually, I'm going to go start here first. We're going to start with some of these reports, budgets, and then we're going to discuss sales tax and apps before I go here. So reports. Most of you are going to use just these saved ones, so a lot of these are going to just save as favorites, your profit and loss, your balance sheet, your receivables, or your payables. However, there's hundreds of different things here. So you've got these reports that are down here, different variations of your profit and loss and your balance sheet, to kind of go from your audit log, which you may want to, save in the future, again, these are sections of who owes you and whatnot, so you can have these lists that are not just your accounts receivable in this regards, but you can do what is my customer balances, or what are all my open invoices through this company. What are my terms list, or how much unbilled time do I have, or unbilled charges that we talked about in the first class. So these are all kind of here. These are the same things of a customer's, but they are a little bit more geared to what you've sold in your products. Then these are some miscellaneous of what you owe on the vendor side. Again, as you can see, a lot of these might come in handy, the 1099 ones. Any kind of bill payments that you need to do. Unpaid bills is a very favorable one. So therefore you can just see in one little table of who you owe and how past due they are, or if they're not past due and how much the whole total is. That was there. These 1099 ones, I will say that if you were using them, make sure you set up your contractors properly, because these reports are only going to show what you told it to do. So it seems to be this time of year, I run into a lot of people that are, oh, I run my 1099 report and nothing's showing up. No, nothing's showing up because you didn't track those vendors or those contractors as 1099 people. So, or you didn't have the right categories, and then you got to kind of play with the report. So just keep that in mind as you're playing. If something's not there, play with the filters, or go back and look at your vendors and contractors to see if they're even being tracked by 1099s. You know, again, expenses, vendors, these are more towards the vendors themselves and the purchases you've made for them. Your sales tax, which we'll go over in just a second, and then these are kind of any employee stuff that you can go through. Ooh, I thought this payroll was actually up there.
Hey,
So-
on that list of for my accountant, if your accountant didn't have access to your QuickBooks and you were gonna print them reports, what reports would they want?
They're gonna want your profit and loss and your balance sheet more than anything. Some may ask for a trial balance report as well. And so you could look that up to be able to send it. Nobody's asking you to know how to read a trial balance. They're just gonna want the reports for a certain date. They'll be very specific for you.
Thank you.
But with all that, so it showed all these kind of different things that you can get and on here, but there's more. If you happen to be, there's a list here. Sometimes I find that these are not all the ones that you need. So if you happen to be talking to me or on YouTube and someone talking to your best friend that other owns a business and says, oh yeah, run this estimates progress reports by customer, you know, and you can't find it down here, try up here. Try this report name, and especially if you know the beginning, start typing it in, you know, so it will bring it up for you. And then I think the only, oh, actually I take it back. There's two more things I'd say about reports, is if you find one that you like and you want to do it all the time and you just can't always forget where it is for some reason, do the little star. So you can do the little star that shows up here. Mine's not sticking. Oh, there it goes. And then it starts showing up here for you. So therefore you don't have to go searching for it every single time. And then the other thing I would point out is if you are running your profit and loss and you always want it to be, say, last month all the time, and you always want it to compare to where you stood last year, instead of making all these, let's just change this by quarters for now. Oh, I guess that doesn't make very much sense if I don't do the full quarter. Sorry. But if you liked this look and this is what you wanted, and so instead of going through and making all those little tiny changes every single time, you can come up here and do the save customization. You can add it to a specific group if you need to, or you can share it within your company or just to yourself. It is going to show in these customized reports. So this is something that you can do, make sure that the timing is right and whatnot, but you know, it automatically chooses last quarter, whatever it may be. If we happen to have chose, like, we can have this scheduled to email to the owners, to a board of directors, etc., you know, whoever the finance managers are, all that, we can just have them automatically email if that's necessary for you. And then management reports are just groupings of different reports that kind of come in handy for those same reasons that I just said with the custom reports, where you create a management report. This is just a bunch of stuff that you could or could not use, but the most important part is this reports. You can select your saved report that you want to add. Sorry, forgot to name it. So now it shows up. So when you preview it, all your reports are here. So they'll show up in that grouping for you. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot more detail than what I already just did real quick. However, I did just want to show you that there's stuff here that you don't have to manually go into every report every month and spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes trying to change it all to make you want. Find the system, find the report you want, make the changes you need, save it as a custom report, or even create a management report for a whole grouping. And this is where you would find them. Are there any reporting questions on that parking lot while I'm kind of just talked about this?
No, I was just flipping through there and I think I asked the one that I had.
Okay.
Pam, the liability report, the sales liability report with the 2 lines is a real question for me.
Right, and we're gonna do sales tax in just a minute. But I think in your case, it's because you have 2 different categories of sales tax. And some items are using one category and some items are using the other, and that's why there's 2 different lines.
Yeah, so I don't know the situation too, but if you chose 2 different reporting entities in there too when you did sales tax, then it will come up as multiple lines. Like I will show you in a minute, and I'm going to choose California and Arizona because those are the first ones that are already plugged in here. But you'll see 2, even though it's the same product and it might be, in our case, to the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, if you chose 2 different things when you were doing there, that's where you would show multiple lines. So keep
Yeah,
that in mind too.
I think under products and services, when you create the sales tax line, I think it got created twice, and some sales items have chosen one line and other sales items chose the other. So when you do the report, it comes out with 2 different lines.
Okay, so the next thing is going to be budgets. This is real quick. This is only available to the higher ends of QuickBooks Online. I believe it's just Plus and above.
I have one other question, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is tag the best way to develop a separate P&L report just for your gift shop?
You can. You can also, depending on what version you have, you can also use classes. If you were in those higher end, to be able to just pull it out, gift shop. If you were on the lower end, I think you're probably right in just using tags, just consistently making that same tag, or create a tag group so QuickBooks knows these, whatever tags you have listed in that group are in part of your gift shop.
And lower end meant that you have the lower, like a lower version of QuickBooks, not the advanced one.
Correct.
Okay.
Good.
Yep.
Okay, so budgets, again, is not available in every single one of them. It is available in the upper tiers. Advanced definitely has it, and I believe Plus has it as well. But for those of you that do have it, we're just gonna go through a quick thing here of creating one. You can do 2 different ways. So you can create your own budget, or you can import a budget. If you have an imported budget, you want to make sure that you go in here and check this P&L budget template first. I don't want to download it, so I'm not going to do it. But it's important, and it will save you a lot of time of going in here and using this template for what you need, because it will make the upload part way easier. Because if you don't have the same exact, it could be something as simple as a space in between certain, the labels, but if they don't work, then you start getting a bunch of pop-ups, and QuickBooks says it doesn't work, and then it even frustrates me. So I can't imagine if it frustrates people that don't use QuickBooks every day. So just keep in mind for your first one, make sure you use this template. And then you just follow the directions, you upload it, it will say where it looks, where it gives you the look that I'll show you in a minute, and you can improve it from there.
Hello, this is Trevor.
So we're gonna do just this create budget real quick. You can choose it off of what you want. These are your only two options. And then if you've had previous years, this makes it easier of saying which year you're going for. And then in between, once we get in there, I can copy off of your things. But you're just gonna choose what year you're doing it for. Was it last year? Is it next year? Is it this year? Type of thing. And then this will also tell you, is this the consolidated version, which is the collapsed version basically of your profit and loss? Or is it, do you want all those little categories that you may have grouped? So choose whichever one you want, and then you can go to next. The important, I'm not gonna go through, then it's just a spreadsheet, start typing whatever you wanted to type in there. Just make sure up here that you're using the right year that you chose before. And then here, if you are comparing the reference data, don't compare it to the current year, make sure you compare it to a previous one so you kind of have an idea of what you're doing. You can also change it here for your yearly, quarterly, or monthly, so it shows what you want to do. And then you also have the ability to change your name up here by that little pencil. And that's really it. A lot of people, I think, overcomplicate budgets, like in regards to it. It's a lot of your internal purchases and what your internal processes and what you want to track is definitely complicated, but once you know that information in regards to QuickBooks, it is literally entering what you want to do for each month, and then every month run the report that's a budget versus actual to compare where you even stand. All right. So we're gonna move on to sales tax. So sales tax is just what we were talking about, you know, those products and services that you listed in your up here when we did products and services, that you've got this, every time you sell one of them, QuickBooks is taking, you know, tracking all of that for your month. So you're gonna go in here, sales tax, your first time you're gonna do is gonna get started. It will ask you these questions of where are you, what are you doing, which agencies do you want to talk, you know, to track. I don't think that's not the right one, but who cares? You, when you're doing it, make sure you do it the right way. But for this instance. So you're just gonna say where you're going, if they're all, you have the opportunity to do it up here or down here, what those specific agencies are. Hit next, you know, make sure that these are current. Intuit is very good at staying on top of all the percentage changes within the states, but you, for your own records, you want to make sure you get the right one. Because sometimes maybe you just chose the wrong department and it should be 3% instead of 7%. So now we have those all set up. It's just going to give you directions. It gives you, hey, these are who you are. Where do you stand? This part's kind of cool now because it just says if you're where your liabilities are, so you can choose what you're doing. Massachusetts actually comes down to what Massachusetts really is. It says, you know, by your sales dollars down here. So you're just gonna, and then it will say monthly, quarterly, yearly. Choose what you want. So this is where, once you're all set up, this is the important part for you guys, is to look down here and to see how much do you owe, what this is, you know, to make sure, did you pay it, did you not pay it, how much you owe. And it also helps you, this is gonna be bad, I think, as an example.
Yeah,
Because I
because
don't
we
think
don't
there's
have anything in there for that time frame yet.
I know, and then they did last year too, when there wasn't really much in there, I don't think, when I looked last. Yeah, well, this one has it, it's just, it's kind of a good example, but it's as good as I'm gonna get for today. But it will show you that your this tax liability report, it shows you what your gross totals are, it shows you how much of the total was non-taxable, and it shows you how much that you're gonna owe. right? So your math, when you're going on to the state's website and you're putting in your information, the state should match what this is. Oh, that's not what I wanted. And you can also, so once you're in here and there's actually stuff in here, you can actually choose in that one, the screen that pops up will actually say, would you like to make a payment? I suggest you make those payments from here because they do make your reporting easier for how much is open and how much is not. That doesn't mean you have to. You can write a physical check in your bank register and then just put it towards sales tax. But this just makes it cleaner, easier to track if there was ever an issue. Is there
And when
any
you
other?
say that, when you say that you're recording it here, not actually paying the Department of Revenue there?
Very good point. So QuickBooks is not set up directly through the Department of Revenue. It is just all you're doing here is telling QuickBooks the amount you pay, who you pay it to, and how often you're supposed to pay it. You would still have to, once this is tracked on your reports, you have to go onto your state's appropriate website for their Department of Revenue in order to pay those sales tax.
Okay, so if you were here now, like you've been doing business in Alabama and California, if you wanted to add Massachusetts, how would you do that now after it had already been created?
So I should have said that while you were talking, sorry. So these sales tax settings, you can go back in here and it gives you a list of your agencies, so you make something inactive if you're no longer doing business there, or you can do an add agency, which will give you that whole step-by-step thing all over again. And then the same thing down here as if your rates happen to have changed, and I've never seen it not work, but it's computers. So you can say that the rates changed and QuickBooks didn't update automatically correctly. You can go in here and change it, go edit, and then tell it how much you need to pay. Is that it in regards to sales tax?
I think so.
Okay,
Did
perfect.
anybody else have a sales tax question that we didn't address? Okay.
Okay. So these here, just to continue on, is my accountant. This is just if you needed to invite them and you didn't invite them through users. So this is really not that big of a deal on what it is. This banking services is also services through QuickBooks. Your commerce tab is going to be your Etsy's, your Amazons, all that type of stuff, that if you had that channel connected, you are and gave it the right permissions, that you're able to see which orders in this tab. It will tell you your sales and your refunds, and it just gives you a list, kind of like the previous ones we've just shown. And then it says the same thing with your payouts, as it says you were paid $300, and that $300 consists of all of this minus the fees. So you're able to kind of look at it all in this one little area. Just make sure, the only thing I can say is when connecting these apps, make sure that they're mapped properly, because if they're not, it's going to just give you a whole bunch of headaches. So if you need anything, some of these videos might be worth a little bit of your time to just make sure they're mapped properly from the start. And then somebody last time was asking how to add these apps or to find them and be able to connect them. You'd find it here in this app center. So you can either see the apps in this overview, the ones that are connected to your account, and you can click this little this drop down bar to disconnect it if you need to, or change any of the information. It's not going to let me because this is a sample one. But if you had your login information changed and you had to change your password, you would change it here with your admin information. And if you needed to do a new app, it's where this find app is. What was that one that somebody was, a little green light or something?
Yep.
Maybe. This is where you would do it. So it's going to bring up this screen for you of what is the app, make sure it's the right company, it's not something similar. It tells you what you need to do. It kind of gives you a little bit of the screenshots here of what they're going to look like if you're not using it to give you just an idea of what's going on. And some of them will give you, depending on if they're set up, they will have this little video of a couple minutes of saying, this is how you use our product. Once you decide that it's what you want and it's the right pricing, it doesn't say learn more when you're adding it. It says install in this little green thing. So you would just hit the green thing, install. It asks you a bunch of questions of how you want it to connect to QuickBooks, and then you just move on from there.
Question, are you familiar with Go Payment?
Not really. I've heard of it, I know of it, but I don't know it specifically.
Because when this person got Go Payment, that's who QuickBooks said was a good one to connect them with. But now they're having trouble because when they go to record their sales receipt, they've already processed the credit card payment. But QuickBooks, when they say the money's coming from Go Payment, they want them to put in the credit card number and process it. So my suggestion would be to create something else, Go Payment, with a different term that QuickBooks doesn't recognize, and use that as your payment option when you're filling that in. Do you agree?
Yeah, because I was thinking along the same lines of, to test it out, of creating your own payment and kind of just almost not necessarily starting from scratch, but doing what you said of kind of linking it to something new to see if it could work. If not, do you have your banking information that is in the app in there correctly? As maybe there's some kind of gap there between the two systems talking to each other, of like, one doesn't think it's connecting to your actual checking account or something. And I think that's a stretch, but it might be something to look into.
Okay. Got another question, and I'm not sure if this is the right place for this yet, but I'm going to throw it out. When modifying the expense or income entries imported from your bank statement, does the add key at the end release it to QuickBooks? If you make a mistake and need to change something you've added, how do you reverse the entry? We're going to go over that soon, right?
Yeah, I was gonna just ask you, is that talking about the banking,
Yeah, I
banking
think so.
dashboard? That's what
Yeah.
I think too. Okay, so that's actually, if it's not next, it's gonna be one of the next ones. So we'll
Okay.
just discuss that in a minute. So that kind of covers these of like this line, how to go through there, whatnot. The little gear icon, you can do these different things here. I'm not going to go through a lot of them here. We've already gone through chart of accounts and how to change them. I will go back if somebody has any questions at the end specifically to chart of accounts and kind of change them and add them for you if you need to. Manage users isn't going to show me very much in the sample company. So you would go, if you had to, I know either the first class or the second class, somebody was asking about, the users and the report only users, or possibly time only users. So when you go into manage user and then you hit add user, which is a little green button that's kind of up here on the screen,
Can you do that? Because we do have that question on
You
the
can't.
parking lot.
you
Oh, you
can't,
can't?
unfortunately. It gives me just this screen
Oh,
in the
sorry.
sample one, which is unfortunate. I tried even incognito. I've tried at different computers to try to see if it was me. It didn't. So in the sample company, it doesn't show you, but you would have this over here, and it has a green little button that says add user, and you'd add user, and then a pop-up comes up, and it basically asks you what you want that person to do. So the top two were, last time I looked at it, the top two were report only and time only. Then it asked you about customers and what you wanted them to see, and then it asked you about vendors and what you did or did not want to see. So you have a little bit of wiggle room there of what you want people to see. So your AR people, you can create them as a regular user, but only allow them to see everything in regards to customers, and they don't see vendors, they don't see your banking information, etc. Reports only users are just that. They don't go against your user count, and they're only somebody that can come in and run certain reports to do it. Those are usually pretty handy for salespeople. So if anybody has a sales force out there that needs to see their information for their clients, that's kind of where you would use those report only users. And then the time only users are just so you're not getting charged for 10 employees going in and entering their times. So if anybody has any questions specifically to theirs, they can reach out to Pam or I. We can go through it on a live one, but again, I would just start here with the green little thing and then follow the directions. So account settings, we're going to get into custom forms in account settings. The only difference here is just custom forms brings you directly to the forms themselves. I'm going to just go down a list through account settings to get there. So this account settings is honestly one of the first things you really want to do when you set up your QuickBooks account. So if you haven't done so already, go in there, enter in your information, because this is what your customers are going to see, how your reports are going to run, the look of it all. And it's pretty important to make sure that you just kind of have the right information in here. Although it looks fine sometimes when you do with missing stuff. So any of this list, you're going to go in here. They all have these little pencils too, and that's how you're going to change them. So in this regard, if we were going to go add some information here, Greg's landscape, you know, we're going to do his EIN. You know, I think that's too many ones, but everybody gets the point. So there you can change it here and then hit save, and that will show up the same thing. If this legal name was different as well, you could put Craig's Landscaping LLC or Craig's Landscape Enterprises, you know, type of deal. You'd want to make that show so it's your legal name for any of the IRS forms or state forms that you have to do, and your logo goes here. Make sure you pay attention to the size of your logo, because if your logo was long or too tall and you shrink it, you have to shrink it to make QuickBooks. Sometimes it cuts it all off, so just kind of pay a little bit of attention and play with it there. Your company type, your email, these are what your customers are. The company type is for your information. Your contact information is what's going to show up on QuickBooks statements, invoices, vendor stuff. So if you want your phone number to be there, if you want your email for your contact information to be something other than the company one, you know, so again, if you have an info at or an accounting at, you know, type of email, like you would do that here. A company email that you use is here, but it goes directly, any responses will go directly to your customer facing email. Same thing, your address and your customer facing address is the same thing here, as if you have a mailing address, but you want, or vice versa, you have a physical address, but then you want your customers to mail them to your checks to a certain address, you're going to do that here. These marketing preferences are just shutting off some of these QuickBooks ads that they send you 1,000,010 times.
You can really shut them off there?
It's not gonna let me deal with all, unfortunately, because it's gonna ask all this password stuff. I was hoping to show you can shut some of them off. You know,
Okay.
it is going to make certain ones mandatory for you, but you can at least control it a little bit. So I just wanted to point that out of like, go here, marketing stuff to try to tone it down a little bit, I guess. Your limits, if you need it, most of you are probably not going to run into this at all. But as you're growing and may possibly need to go into other ones, you're going to know where your usage limits are and how many you're using or not using. So chart of accounts, if you happen to be over here, you know, you're not going to be able to get more than 250 for your chart of accounts in the advanced version until you get to the advanced version, I believe. But you're at least going to be able to know, like, oh crap, I'm going close to the edge. Let me see what I can do to condense some of this, or do I really need this as long? And you can kind of make your choices before you're getting to it popping up every time you try to add something new. So there are limits here. The same thing with these people where I was talking about tags, is that there's a limit of how many you can have, but if you're using them smartly, you shouldn't really run into a problem.
And if you are getting close to that, if you make an account inactive, the data is still there from past years. You're just not going to be using that category moving forward.
Yes. Okay. So sales, this is where I'm going to go back to do the customized look and feel in just a minute. But if you have anything that's on your sales, you know, your invoices that are showing and you don't want them to show, or QuickBooks, when you go into your customer side, it's giving you a pop-up and you're like, this is driving me crazy. Why is this happening? I don't really accept deposits, or I don't accept tips. these are the places where you're going to change them. So you can go right in here. The ones that I was just saying happen to be here in the sales format, sales form content, but there's a lot of drop downs and there's a lot of toggles. So if you didn't want to use tags at all, and so don't tempt your employees, shut it off. You know, same thing if you needed discounts or you don't need them discounts, they're just simple toggles to change it. And then the same thing here is a preferred delivery method I run into a lot of the times, where if you're doing big batches of things, people have to, because everything goes to print later. So you're gonna have, then the only way to get rid of it is to manually go in and check them, or to print them to a PDF, and that gets annoying too. Shut it off. You know, just go here, go to none, shut it off. You can change your default terms as well. Down here, it's all the same thing, but you find what's in regards to your products and services. So this pricing rules has not gone really live, so on online version, so I don't know how well or how it does or does not work, but you could kind of play with it. If you were someone that had wholesale and people that order over 15 cases and you get a different price, they get a different price, that's where you'd kind of play with that, of making sure that there's 1 through 14 is at a certain price, 15 through 30 is at a different price, and over 30 is even cheaper. You can turn that on and off. The same thing down here, you would, wherever classes are. Oh, that might be in advanced. But same toggles everywhere you go with all of this. Late fees are if you want to automatically have them go on invoices that are past a certain point. A lot of it is defaulted to the 18% per year. But a lot of places don't charge those late fees, but so that again is up to your business and what you're doing. And sometimes you just do a line item for those people that are really late. You don't automatically do it to everyone, but if it fits for you, that's where you turn it on and off. Anybody that is doing progress invoicing, I do believe in the first one, there was a question in regards to the deposit and going to certain, having one invoice and then having multiple deposits, or the deposit and multiple payments going to that. So you could do it the way that I described there, or you could do the progress invoicing that I kind of described very, very briefly. This is where you would turn that on and off to see if it worked for your company. Your detailed messages we'll talk about in custom forms, how to do that. But if you didn't want to do it in directly forms, you could do it here. These are your automatic reminders. This one might be handy for some people, especially if you have the invoices. Not only we'll do this email again on the top screen, but down here, this is where if you wanted it to be that your invoice wanted to send an automatic email to people that are late, or 4 days beforehand or right on the due date, this is where you would turn them on and off. So you're going to do on the due date. You can choose 7 days before or 7 days after. If you choose to do that, same thing, 14, 30, 90. Unfortunately, you can't customize it more than that, but who really needs more notifications than 3 of them? So you can choose to keep one on, you can choose all 3 to be on. That's up to you. You can shut them all off. And then the online delivery is just if anything's going to be emailed or not. We can show that again on the customs forms, but for a lot of you, please make sure the PDF is attached. It is actually kind of annoying from the person that's paying it to get a screen that says pay now, but not knowing exactly what they're paying until they click a bunch of screens to kind of download and view the invoice. So if you add this PDF to the email, it just makes it easier for the recipient to just click on the invoice and go, oh, okay, I have a question about this, or I want to pay it, and they just go in and pay it. But you can give, beyond that little lecture, you can give like full details or just a summary here too. So it depends on what you want your clients or your customers to be able to see. So let's go into customized look and feel of this. So we don't like the we're just going into, we don't like the standard one. I want to do something that's more creative towards my business and whatnot. You have a couple different options. So you can do default sales receipts, estimates, and invoices. And you can make those your defaults once we're done changing it. But this is where you're going to change the look. These templates are only, you're forced to do certain ones, but you definitely have many, a couple different options. depending on what you like or don't like. So you're gonna just click here to kind of figure out what you want. I'm gonna keep that as my invoice template, that's fine. But again, if you wanted this to be design work, because we're working with a landscaping company, you can have design invoice look a specific way. You can have the landscaping itself look a specific way, depending on what your needs are as a business. So we'll just choose friendly. You're gonna upload your logo if you need to, it will show up here. It will give you an option of where to show it. It's either left, right, or center is really basically what it's gonna come down to, but you can play with it just a little bit to kind of see what you like once it's in there. If you know the color code of your company, you can specify it here, so that way you can just choose one of your branding colors and it can be specific. In this case, we're just gonna randomly, I don't know why it's showing weird. Okay, it went green. So normally this little thing here shows up right here, so you can see all the colors and you can just pick whatever you want if you didn't like the blue. Same thing with the font. This is very limited, but you have a couple choices to if you wanted to change it. Then you just go here to your content. And this is where you're going to be able to check these different sections. So if you wanted here is where a lot of people go. They don't necessarily want the rate to be shown, or they don't need an activity, or they need to change it to say, instead of saying activity and activity, this is where you do it. So you're going to hit the little pencil. It will show up highlighted. You'll get this information over here. Then choose what you want. I want it to say description. I want it to say that. And I also don't want this to say activity. I want it to say product. So we can also, if you're given the right options, you can kind of have a description of the item. So this could be ABC item, and it is whatever you put in there. You know, it's red and soft. Who knows? But as you can see, the main point is that you can kind of change what that does and what that looks like and what it doesn't, as well as change these label edits. You can change these as well. These are going to go by a scale. It's only going to allow you to go so far depending on all these other ones. I believe it only goes up to 100. So it just gives you the space for this, what your paper is, and allows you to just work with it against that. And then down here, if you needed to, there are some kind of different options that most aren't usually used, but if you needed them to be grouped by how many products did you buy within that specific day, a certain type of product can probably go there. I think that's where type is for. But you can play around with it to see how that works and how that changes. You can collapse some of these rows. Anybody that's using progress invoices, it can show your line items if you want to, but that's where it's going to be, some of those things are going to be hidden. And then your email, we can actually go up here as well. So I showed you before where you can add your phone number and your website on the previous screen, you know, when there was a little long list. If you were trying to do that you didn't want it on one one invoice, but you did want it on the other, you can change it here. So you can add your website. And it will start showing up. You can also say, I don't want my email, and it kind of plays with that stuff here. You can also play with if you have some custom transaction numbers and if you want the form numbers to be on there. I do suggest using the numbers just because they're easier to track of who paid what and who didn't, but that's just my preference, not yours. And then custom transaction numbers would be anything as if you used, certain letters in your thing, if it was, CRA-2024, and that's how you tracked them, you could do something like that, but you'd have to set it up here. And again, changing some of these names. And I don't know that anybody really uses custom fields, but if you needed to, you can change them here. They're actually really good for sales lists. And since that's going to go in the list, we're just going to skip that for now. So again, custom forms would be, custom fields would be something as if you were tracking your sales rep and how much they sold and stuff like that. You could use that there, and you can just do the little checkbox down here that would come up if you wanted to use it. And I don't think there's really much here at the bottom. So again, the deposit, actually, it might be come in handy for anybody that's doing progress invoicing, that it will show the deposit and we'll take it off the invoice. So this invoice could be for a full $800, you had a deposit for $4, this will show you only $4 is due. And then changing the emails of what the wording actually is. So a lot of people, I'm sure you've seen, just kind of stick to this generic, that's what it is. And that could be good for you, that could not be. So you can just start typing just like it's a regular email. If you wanted it to not say Craig's Design and Landscaping, and just say sincerely Craig, or have it say, you know, I appreciate your business. Look forward to you working as a campsite. So you can change it to be whatever you want. As far as I recall, there is not a character limit here. So you can just do whatever you need to do. If it needs to be short and sweet, or if you need to give directions on what to do, you can have that here. You can also change some of these, as if you don't want it to say dear, you want it to say blank, to say to, if you wanted it to be their first name or Mr. whoever, you can kind of play them here. And then the same thing goes for your reminder email. So you're going to change it here. For design is going to say these specific things. If it doesn't stay the same, does it say your custom thing? But you can do all of that here for just the design invoice. So therefore you're not changing it every single time. Was there any specific design questions? I don't recall seeing them. Oh, I
No, there
didn't
were
see-
not.
Okay, I didn't save that one, but if I did save it, it would have shown here. And it would have had whatever name you wanted. The last time you changed it. And so in order to change that to your default, it's this little arrow. If there was more than one, this bottom says set as default. And you would just click that. So then every time you would do the invoice, it would do the design invoice that I just chose. Or every time you did an estimate, it would do what the one you wanted it to do. I think that's really kind of it. It's just really just making it look the way you and feel of what your company is so just in order to, if you have a more laid back company, because we're here on the Cape, then you don't want it to look all stiff and formal. But then if your company is all super formal and having to deal with multi-billion-dollar things, and you're trying to deal with other companies that are huge and you need to protect this look, you can kind of do that with some of that styling, so it doesn't look out of place.
Let's see. We have about a half hour left, so I didn't know where
Yeah.
we were on your list.
Yeah, so we already did these. This was only just gonna be, this list is where you're just gonna find everything that we talked about before. If you actually had a list of styles, you can come find it here. Your products and services that we talked about, your chart of accounts, any kind of payment methods, or if you needed to add or change them, you're gonna find it here. You can find all your recurring transactions here as well, and I'll touch base on that in a minute.
Closeout for the year is in that accounts and settings section. Can you
Oh.
go back and show us that?
Thank you. Because we didn't do, so your, is it it's in advanced. All right, so sales, we just went over. Your expenses are gonna be the same thing here. You can just turn off purchase orders if people need them or not, and change your default messages. Anything in regards to time, you can change your day of the week if you need to here. And then in advanced is going to be where some of those big things were, where I was saying tracking of locations, you're going to turn on and off. I forgot it there about enabling account numbers if you want them. But here, up here at the top is where you're starting your fiscal year, where some companies start in the middle of the year. So you're telling QuickBooks what it is and when to start. So if yours needs to change, you just change it with a little drop down, which method you are, and this close the books. So you're going to turn it on here. You're going to put what you want as a closing date. So do you want it to be at the end of the year, which a lot of people do? You know, you can close the books at the end of every month as well, but it's kind of going in here and changing the date and making sure you're good. But so due to December 31st, and then you're going to say, do you want it to allow your somebody to change it after you close the books. They can still change it, but it just gives them a little pop-up and lets them do what they want. Or do you want them to only people with the password can change previous ones? I suggest if you're actually having the discussion of fully closing out your books at the end of every month or the end of every year, you only want people that have a password in order to change it. That just makes it so it's a higher level of people that are in your books changing stuff that you've already looked at and confirmed. And you would just enter your password in here and then save it. And that was the only question of how to turn it on, correct?
Yeah, and you just explained it all, so they can see
Okay.
how that works.
Okay, great. And then if you were looking for other things of certain formats or the automation not being, if you didn't want it to have everything, if every invoice you put in for, full cars, if you didn't want it to automatically remember what it did last time, or to automatically apply any credits to that bill, you would shut it off here. So if you can't find it in these sales and expenses here, you're gonna just find it in advanced. And then this custom fields I'll show real quick. It's really simple. It's kind of restricted in what you can and cannot do, but you want it to show up on sales rep. You want it to show up on all forms, or you want it to show up only on the purchase orders. Those are your choices. You can't have it show up only on invoices and estimates and forget about everything else. It has to be an all or nothing. And then you can just choose if you want it to print on the actual invoices when you do it or not. So some of these things you're able to show when it's printed and shown to the customer, but on your screen, you could actually do, you can see other things. And then it will just give you the whole list, like everything else, it just gives you the list of what you have. You can choose to edit it or make them inactive from here. And then I would like to do, so other reconciliation is really the only one that I'd like to spend the last time on. These here budgeting, we went over. The audit log is in your reports. The audit log will tell you what, who did what. So we'll say it was something was deleted on this certain time and it was deleted by this user, for you to know how to just, who to go back to. Is somebody accidentally deleting something and you need to teach them what to do properly? Are they always causing certain issues? Kind of having those discussions you can find out from here. And then we discussed those of Smart Look was just allowing QuickBooks when they come in to look at your screen, and then Resolution Center was any previous things that you've had. So I think the banking and the reconciling is really what the rest is. In regards to that, did we cover most of these parking lots beyond that?
There's a couple of related to reoccurring transactions, but a majority of them are related to reconcile. So let's do that. Which one do you want to do first? Okay.
Well, I can just do recurring transactions real quick for you. So you're gonna go here to recurring transactions. You can create a new one from here. Just by going to the new button, you're gonna select what it is. My thing's going all over the place. So if it's always a bill, if it's always a credit memo, if it's always an invoice, etc., you've got a pretty decent list here to know what it to do. But say, let's just do a check. Hit OK. It's gonna just show you what do you want this to be. So we'll just do AT&T. I want it to automatically do it. So we're gonna hit scheduled here, but if you wanted it to just remind you, or if you wanted it to just sit there so you knew the same format every single time. So like daily sales is kind of one that you usually would have unscheduled, but you have the choice here. You also have a choice of, do you want to put it in QuickBooks Bank Register at the time of it, or do you want to do it in before? So we can just do 5 days before. I don't think AT&T is going to show up, so we're not going to bother with that. It comes from the checking account. How often do you want it to do? So you have some options here. And then you also have the options of, which date do you want it to be? Do you want it to be every other week? The last day of the month, etc. You can change this to be on the first day of the month every 3 months if that's what you wanted, by just doing it here. And then your start date. So we'll just put today. If you want it to stay open-ended, you're just going to leave it as none. If you want it to end by a certain date, you're gonna choose by, and if you want it to end after, say, a year, you're gonna just do end after 12 occurrences. Telephone. Dollars. Now we're gonna save the template because we put it in here. So now it shows up here. So on the first of every month, starting February 1st, it's going to just put this into our check register for AT&T. So it's just automatically there and you're good to go.
One
the
more
other way to
question
do
there.
it would,
Oh, never mind. Go ahead. I'll come back.
okay. If you were in a bill here, I just wanted to pick one that was already done. So if you were already in a bill and you wanted to do everything that we just did, because we made this, you know, be what it needs to be, you're just gonna do down here, make reoccurring, hit OK, and then save it, save the name, and you're good to go. And what were you gonna add?
Can you show how to duplicate or edit one of them?
Yes. Mouse is going everywhere, sorry guys. So if you wanted to change it, so this AT&T bill that I just did, if the price went down or it went up, you know, you would just go into edit, you would change the amount, and then you're just gonna save the template. And it will do whatever dates you wanted to do. If you needed to duplicate it, to actually use it beforehand, if you wanted to skip it or just delete it, you would do it from this little down arrow. But if you used it, it's just gonna show up. Show the bit, well, this, sorry, it was the check that I did, what we did, save and close, and it's gonna bypass that 5 days before because I've already done it.
And again, this is just recording it in QuickBooks because this is something that automatically happens through whatever AT&T bills your credit card automatically or whatever it is.
Right. Okay. Reconciling. I could talk about reconciling for the next hour and a half and still go over your head. So please do not, like, don't go super crazy in regards to this. I'm just going to show you the overview of what should happen. I did go in beforehand and actually made sure I had the right numbers, so therefore I can show you a couple problems people run into. But if you don't get it the first time, ask Trisha for this recording and kind of go back to this point and you can just kind of review it and go over it again if needed. But you're gonna go into reconcile. The first time you're gonna do it, it's gonna say, let's get started. So we're gonna get started. A lot of you are gonna see for the first time $0, and that's okay. If you are continuing on every single month and reconciling the way that you're supposed to, then you will see this beginning balance all the time. So keep that in mind. And by reconciling, I mean that you're actually looking at your physical bank statement, or you're looking at the online version of that at the end of every month, and you're going line by line from what's on your bank statement and making sure it's in QuickBooks. It does, if you have automatic banking transactions set up, it is in there, but it's a computer. Sometimes there's glitches, sometimes it misses a day or two because you had some problems. Sometimes you change your password and you didn't realize it didn't do what was on Sunday. So sometimes there are things missing. And so in order to keep your bank register just active and as close to your regular bank balance as possible, you want to do this every month. So we've got our bank statement. We know what this is. We can choose different accounts here. If we wanted, it has to be a bank or an asset account, but most of the time you're just going to do your checking, savings, money market, whatnot. So we've got our beginning balance of 5,000. Our ending balance, like I said, I looked it up before. You would just get that off your bank statement. Now we're going to start reconciling. All these little pop-ups will go away after you kind of just tell them to be quiet. But for the first time, they're just little things of showing you around of where to go. So we've got our balance here. We've got all these transactions. So we're going to either go line by line and choose what we need to. Or if you know for a fact that everything's already in there and everything is good, you go to this little button up here on the top and it will select all of them. So it says, do you want to select them all? Yes, I do. If everything is perfect and everything is in there in QuickBooks, you will get this screen and you get this little green check mark. It's $0. You're good to go. Like, you're good to go. You're gonna hit finish now. You will save this and then you're gonna hit done. Now, what ends up being a problem for people is if someone came in to your bank register and accidentally deleted something. They were doing things, there was a problem with your customers' payments, all sorts of stuff I could list for you. So now you're gonna just go in, you're gonna go back here, we're gonna go to reconcile. You don't know that they deleted the stuff. So QuickBooks is gonna tell you in the beginning that, hey, my beginning balance is off. We can help you fix it. It's going to bring up an audit log. It's gonna tell you that it's the discrepancy, if the discrepancy is because this was deleted. So you can now take that information and say, okay, nope, that really was a legit expense. I really should have done it. So we're gonna go just put it back into the check register for the right date. I have no idea what it was. So now we know we fixed that. We fixed the problem because we brought it, was brought to our attention. We're good. We fixed the problem. It's still going to tell you that there's an issue because you can't fix the beginning balance, but you still want to be able to do the reconciliation. So you're going to take the ending balance that's actually the real ending balance that's on your bank statement. You're going to still take that one. You're going to change the date to the next month and you're going to start reconciling like normal. So that $108 is actually not showing up. So we're just going to clear the filter here. Or did I do it today's date by accident? Oh no, I did it by 2024. If it's something in the past, it's going to show up in the very beginning here. But again, you're going to continue on to do your reconciliation as normal because you don't want to, you want to make sure that things are right for that particular month and that you're not running into a second or a third problem. So you're going to click all the things that you need to click. For time saving purposes, I'm just going to click them all. So
Oh, you need the 108 at the top.
yes, that's what, but this should still be 108, so I'm still off.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what I clicked, guys, to tell you what the issue is, but ultimately, if I did things correctly, you would have corrected all of the December. You would have gotten the $0 that was up here, or you're actually this little, I take that back. So you would have done everything correctly, make sure everything matched up and good. Then you would have had that, this little exclamation point and it would say 10809 is your difference. And then you're gonna know, oh, okay, this 10809 is my difference, we're good to go. And then it would get a 0 checkbox and you'd be good, you'd be all set. However, where I did make a mistake, which is kind of, honestly, it's kind of good timing. I did make a mistake with December. So I would need to go back and say, all right, let me see, is my payments right? Does that match my bank account? Okay, that number is off. So that means I know that I need to go back and check. Okay, do I have 250? Do I have 224.36, etc.? Because that's where my payments are off. So I have something checked or unchecked depending on which way this balance is going, to know where the problem is, and you're just gonna have to redo it until you get to 0. Sometimes it's just easier to start all over again. So I'm just gonna, I just select them all, unselect them again, and then I just start individually doing it all over again, so I know where my issue is.
Yeah, I have a really good question for you at this point in time.
Perfect.
Is there a way to erase transactions that show up on the reconcile screen from previous years?
That is gonna get into a whole accounting thing, so.
I know. But a lot of people have those things that never got resolved, so.
Yes, So ultimately, you should have your taxes match your QuickBooks file and everything is good. So it should have been cleared up in 2022 or when you were cleaning up 2021. However, if you are a few years later, you can do one of two things. If you have all your tax information just to your CPA and they're keeping track of it and they're only picking and choosing certain things out of QuickBooks and it is not your end all be all for your business, go ahead and delete them and just be done with it. If it is, and how I like things to be because I like them clean, I would go in and do a journal entry for those. So if these ones here were off, I would just do a journal entry that was the opposite of this 10809. So go in, journal entry, telephone, and then I would create a debit for 10809, continue to go on for whatever this pest control is and all of this other stuff, and then you offset it with that amount for the bank account, if that makes sense. So the 10809, then you would have a 10809 show up here. Once you were done with that journal entry, you'd click both of them, they'd offset each other. I can kind of simplify it after the fact if anybody needs, but that's really all you're supposed to do is one or the other. Don't delete them if your CPA is using QuickBooks though.
Yeah. Okay, now after this, I have a bunch of just like bank register questions.
Okay. That was gonna be the last thing I was gonna touch base on, was just this banking transaction type of thing, so we can answer all those questions.
Okay,
We're pretty much done. If there's really no reconciling questions at all anymore.
I don't think so. We got that one. Not at the moment.
I'm impressed, guys. All right, so when you were in, so we're kind of going backwards. I showed you the reconciliation before everybody was accepted these transactions. So you want to make sure that these are all accepted before you reconcile. But what are your specific questions in there because there's really
Okay.
not much to go over here.
Yep. So when modifying the expense or income entries imported from your bank statement, does the add button at the add key at the end release it to QuickBooks? Also, if you make a mistake and need to change something you added, how do you reverse the entry?
So if you hit this add button, it's going to take it as is. So it's going to, this one in particular for a rental, it's going to have no payee and it's going to go to uncategorized income. So if you did that and you just hit add, it's going to bring it over to the bank register. This one.
Yep.
All right. So it's going to bring you over to the bank register and whatnot. And then you were like, oh crap, I put that under uncategorized income the way I wasn't supposed to. It's supposed to go somewhere else. You can, sometimes QuickBooks lets you edit directly from here. Sometimes it's picky and makes you go to edit. There's really not a way to it. So it's just one or the other, but you're going to fix it from here. So either design income by putting it in there or hitting edit. And fixing it down here. And then you just save and close or save and new, whatever you need to do.
Now, what if you decided, oh, that was already in there and I need to match it to something that was already there, so now that's in there twice?
So the easiest way is just to go in and delete it. So the one you just did, if you know for sure it's a duplicate, then go in and just delete it. It's going to bring it back up onto this transaction report. So because it didn't match anything right away, it's going to just bring it back onto this transaction report and then you can start over. So you've got the $200, instead of categorizing it, you're going to find a match. Sample company drives me nuts sometimes, but it's what it is. You're going to find the match. So you're going to find whatever it is. If you can't find what you want, change the dates. A lot of the times it's just a little kink that, even though it's the 29th of October, it doesn't pick it up if you do the 27th, but it might pick it up if it does the 1st.
Okay.
And then you just match it from there and hit save a note and move on.
Great. Just an FYI for everybody, while we're going through these questions, Trisha's gonna put a link to a survey for the class in the chat, so please take a moment to fill it out. Now I have another question. Someone got a message that says, here is the information for the, oh, sorry. You must save this file to your computer's hard drive and import it using file import IFF files in QuickBooks. And that's a message that they got. And it came from their merchant account.
So what were they trying to do? Were they trying to import things into QuickBooks Online and then they got a pop-up saying it's the wrong file type? I'm just not following, I guess. I'm sorry.
It's probably easier if I clarify by saying
you.
it. I don't-
Perfect.
Fantastic, thank you. So when I'm trying to download the report from the merchant account, which carries, you know, the person's information, what they paid, yada, yada, yada. So it's that report comes in this file, which this IIF file, in order to put it into QuickBooks. That's what it says for me. I put it in quotes, the file / arrow import IIF file ... I'm like, okay, I have no idea what that means.
So it's just a type of file that QuickBooks is looking at. So there's a .qbo, if it comes from the bank, it's the IIF. It's kind of the equivalent of like a .exl for Excel, a DOC for Word, that type of thing, you know, .pdf for Adobe PDFs. It's that same equivalent. So if you're exporting it out from there, you just need to make sure that you say it's an IIF file, and then you go in here, upload when you're going into QuickBooks, since they're sounds like they're not automatic. You're just going to do upload file, drag and drop the IIF file in here,
Okay.
and then you're good to go, usually.
But I do it as a bank transaction? You're saying it says import bank transactions up there at your top left.
Oh,
Is that
so,
where I would, because it's coming from a, I guess it's, I don't know. That's what I don't
so what
understand.
is this? So what, oh, so you're right. So back that up. So what are you trying to do in QuickBooks with that information? Is that because you're trying to match up? I took it as you were trying to match up what a Stripe, a Square, or whatever your merchant account was that had all your information from your customers and was trying to bring that information into QuickBooks in order to match it. But are you trying to do something different with the customer side, like bringing in as a customer invoice?
Well, not an invoice. It is essentially, it's, the file will include what they are charging me for the credit card transactions, as well as what I have received in payment via credit card from customers. So it's kind of a conglomeration of, it's all of it, I think, is what the file is going to be. So that's
Okay.
why I'm not sure where to put it.
I think that you're still going to be putting this into this upload file. I am going to have a screen that has my email address and Pam's email address. If you want to touch base with either one of us after the fact,
Okay.
we can look more specifically. Like, I don't mind spending 20 minutes and kind of doing a whole screen share and seeing exactly what you're looking like and giving you the right direction. It's just kind of hard where it's a little vague. I still think it's this what you're trying to do, but we can talk later if you need it.
That's perfect. I'll try it there, and then if it looks like it's weird afterwards, then I'll let you know. Thank you so much.
And just to, not that you brought it up, but because your point is, if you did bring something in to QuickBooks and you're like, oh crap, this is not what I want it to look like, before you add any, don't go and add them. Look at them here. And if they don't work, just select them all and exclude them. They're not going to put it into your your check register.
Awesome. Perfect.
So
Thank you.
some other people might need that as well, as if you did get into a point where, crap, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. How do I get rid of these? If it's not into your bank register and it's just sitting here on this screen, just exclude them and it's not going to do anything to your numbers.
Thank you so much.
Next question, Pam.
Is
I know we
there
have
an
like 3
option-
minutes.
Is there an option to split a transaction between business and personal expenses?
Yes, so here, we're gonna just use the same thing, it's gonna categorize. Here, you're gonna have a split button. So we can choose however many things that we wanna divide this up to, so. If this was going to be, we'll just use telephone, because that's what I've been using all day. Advertising with some of it. And the remaining is an owner's draw. Of course, it doesn't have.
Yeah, I found like someone else just did it recently and owner's draw was not a category.
Okay,
They
in
started it.
yours, not the sample company, you will have, there's not even an equity. That's just silly. Okay, we're gonna pretend this open balance equities really says owner's draw. Cause it will have some kind of owner's distribution, owner's draw, some of that is already in your thing. And then you're gonna just divide it up the way you need it to be, so $300 went here. $300 went to advertising and $600 was your personal expenses for owner's draw. You would just divide that out and then hit accept. And you can do that in the bank register as well, as if you were in there as an expense. That's what all those different lines are. If you were in the bank register, you hit edit and it's gonna give you all the different lines and you would do the same thing.
Okay, and owner's draw was a question from last time too, so you can just pick one line item and make it owner's draw if that was the case.
Yes. And it's the same thing as what I just did with telephone and advertising. You just choose what owner's draw.
Okay. Now, if you make some cash purchases, how should you be tracking those?
You are going to, it depends on where the cash comes from. So if the cash came from the checking account, and let's go back to this $1,200 and pretend that you took the cash. So you took $1,200 in cash and it was gonna go to partially to advertising, subcontractor, et cetera, et cetera. You're gonna do, of course, there's not a subcontractor. Okay, pest control services is where we're gonna change it to. So we did some of that to there and some of it went to somebody for advertising. You divide it up here, so you would just do the $1,200 that was taken out of the bank account, $1,000 went there, $200 went there, and you're good to go. If the cash purchases came from you personally, and then you're trying to record them, you would do that through a journal entry. You could technically do it through an expense by just offsetting them, but we won't get into that. The journal entry you would do decrease the owner's draw or increase the owner's draw and then increase the expenses and decrease the owner's draw for that amount of cash.
Okay. Why don't you do the closeout and then I have a couple more questions regarding cash transactions, but we don't need to keep everybody here for those.
Okay. So, oh, the other thing I did want to point out is some people are always looking for shortcuts. So your shortcuts, you can find your list in this additional info. Or if you are using a PC, it's Control-Alt ? And it gives you all of the, these different things. So you're gonna have an Alt option or a Control option here, and then these letters or these symbols might help you. And then I think beyond that, we've covered everything. We've gone through that brief list of everything that needs to go. And, ultimately, I just wanted to say that, thank you for participating. Thank you to SCORE and CDP and the Cooperative Bank to allow us to do this for you. If anybody has any questions, I threw Pam's email up here for you. And then this is my contact information if anybody needs to get in touch. I have no problems answering quick questions, especially if it's by email and I can get back to you the next day. I will have no response of saying here, point you to this direction and kind of giving you the way to go. So, Anybody, I'm here. I mean, Pam, do you still have like 15 minutes or so in case anybody
Yep.
does have any questions? We can kind of.
Yes, I do. And I do have a cash account transaction or question, so we can go on to that. But I want to say thank you to everybody for participating. Hopefully you got the link for the survey so that we can see, you know, how this worked for everybody and what we can do differently when we do it again in the future. Okay. Thanks, everybody. So the cash account question, Crystal, was, can you show the cash account and charge in the chart of accounts so that they can understand it? You know, is that, I put it in as a banking account, but someone asked if it should be an equity account.
I wouldn't do it as an equity account. I've always done it as a bank account. Just because you're sitting there with money in, say, a petty cash fund. So you have a stack of cash that's sitting in a safe or a lockbox or wherever you happen to have it. And, you know, you're going to take money in and out of that. And so I would have it as that, treating it the same way as you do a checking account. You know, and then I would reconcile it too, at least at the end of the year, to make sure that you still have that same base amount and that you're actually accounting for whatever you did. You paid a contractor for out of cash, you got office supplies. You want to make sure that all that is in your books. And replenishing it, usually you would keep it. And the other thing to replenish it is I would just try to get myself in a habit of replenishing that cash and taking it out of the business checking account. So therefore you can just track it all in QuickBooks.
Yep. And if you just put your receipts in that bag, box, safe, wherever with the cash, then it makes it easier to reconcile it later because you have all those pieces to record and make sure you didn't miss anything.
I just assume that stuff. So good point. Thank you.
Well, I know, like, working with people on little policies and procedures, like that's one of those little things that's helpful.
Absolutely.
I think I got all the questions that we had. So if I didn't and someone else has one, please share it now. You can unmute to share a question as well.
About cash accounts, are you putting it in a separate checking account? Because it's not a check. So I'm sorry, it's a basic question, but I don't understand that.
No, you're fine. So in your chart of accounts, I would set it up as a bank, even though it's not. I would leave it here as your bank thing, and I would be doing petty cash, cash account, however you want to label it, that's up to you. And you're gonna have the account name here. I skipped one. So you're gonna do a bank account, have it go under bank account, have it go cash on hand, name it whatever you want so you know what it is. You're gonna hit save. And then it's gonna start off with $0, but let's pretend that that's $1,200 one that I've been working with is actually going to your petty cash. That's how you're going to track it from that way. So now how it shows up as petty cash on your list. Let me go back to the chart of accounts. It's now going to have a $1,200 balance here. And you can use this register for all those things that I've talked about. So you use that cash for $200 went to advertising on that date. On 1/1, we did $150, not 1,500. I don't know if office supplies, but office expenses is good. And so now when you go into wherever you're keeping that cash, at this moment in time, you should have $850 there. Do you follow? You're good?
I think so. Thank you very much. Yes.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Yes, I'm typing a question. I just sent it. I've missed a few of these. I'm going through the recorded versions because I had to meet with clients, but did you run over, you know how like before you actually post out everything, you can run reports to see if you made any errors? Did one of the sessions show you how to go into detailed reports?
No, I didn't really, this is just an overview of
Okay.
where to get access to them.
Got
If you have a specific question, you can reach out to me. I don't mind answering.
Okay.
But you're gonna find it here.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times you're gonna really find that it's your profit and loss, and that you're going to find if you know how to read a trial balance. You could go there, obviously, but it's gonna know that your profit and loss and looking at it by certain periods of times and just comparing them to know if it's up or down or something's really weird.
Yeah. I have a girl, BJ, she kind of does the book. She helps me make sure they're right. And she has set up some memorized reports, which I find very useful.
Good. Yeah, continue on. I'm using those. We definitely didn't get into all the nitty-gritty details because
Okay.
we would need a whole other session for that.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was great. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll look for the recording.